Will be invited to enjoy some refreshments in the courtyard. While discovering some virtual reality devices to enjoy some refreshments in the courtyard, which will be displayed throughout the evening. Founder and director. On va y aller maintenant. Speakers, dear moderators, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you here this evening for the very first edition of the Hong Kong Night of Ideas. My name is Men Ho. I'm a press officer at the French Consulate, and I am very honored to be your MC this evening. The Night of Ideas, La Nuit des Idées, is initiated by the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs and the Institut Français, the French Institute. Today's event is organized by the Consulate General of France with our venue partner, the Asia Society Hong Kong Center. This event is composed of 4 different parts of discovery on the theme How Will Artificial Intelligence Change Our Society? Please allow me to quickly guide you through today's program, starting in a few minutes. The installations and showcases which will be displayed throughout the evening. From 8 to 8:30, back in this theater, you will be enjoying the AIR interactive digital performance brought to you by Studio City Shake, and then followed by a discussion with its founder and director. Then we will move on to the second roundtable from 8:30 to 9:30, which will satisfy your curiosity about how AI is transforming the artistic creation. Last but not least, from 9:30 to 10, there will be a workshop on the AIR performance in this theater and VR showcases in the courtyard conducted by our partners to close the evening. You are all most welcome to actively join in this free flow of ideas tonight and experience the joy of sharing it and exchanging views and ideas. This event is being live streamed on YouTube and Facebook, and since we are in numbers tonight, please note that you're also welcome to follow the debates live in the Credit Suisse room just next to the courtyard, in case there is no more room in this room tonight. And before we begin, may I ask you to switch your mobile phone on silent mode, please? Thank you very much. Now, to inaugurate the event, I would like to invite Mr. Eric Berty, Consul General of France in Hong Kong, to come on stage to deliver his welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Manu. Distinguished guests, speakers and moderators, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's a great pleasure for me to inaugurate tonight this first edition of the Hong Kong Night of Ideas, one of the most emblematic events in terms of the circulation of sharing of ideas in France and in the entire French cultural network throughout the world. Culture is at the heart of the diplomacy, French diplomacy, and for us, the circulation of ideas, their confrontation and their sharing are assets in the complex and often uncertain world where we live. Thanks to the international network of French schools abroad, thanks to the 300,000 foreign students currently studying in France, thanks to French language and to Francophonie, thanks to the many events offered by our cultural network, France widely contributes to share and circulate ideas. As a consequence, it was both natural and necessary for the Consulate General of France in Hong Kong to register in this beautiful world event of La Nuit des Idées, a diplomacy of knowledge and ideas. Launched for the first time in 2016, the Night of Ideas aims to gather during one night thinkers, intellectuals, philosophers, and representatives of civil society or artists to discuss the issues of the world contemporary. Tonight, for the third consecutive year, tens of thousands of people will gather in more than 150 locations around the world to participate in the Night of Ideas from Hong Kong to Buenos Aires, from Melbourne to Berlin. In 3 years, the Night of Ideas has become this major international meeting for the free circulation of ideas worldwide, placed the issue of our time under the crossfire of philosophical reflections, scientific knowledge, artistic practices, and literary experiences. This first Hong Kong Night of Ideas could not be without the mobilization and participation of our partners, whom I wish to salute and thank tonight. Allow me first to thank the Asia Society, our partner venue, which welcomes us tonight in this magnificent historic buildings. Also, I wish to thank the Institut Français in Paris, Studio City Shake, our VR partners, as well as our media partner, Mar Vivo, who will film tonight the Night of Ideas and whose sequences will be broadcast tonight during the Night of Ideas organized in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Hôtel du Ministre in Paris. The capital of France and the heart of our French diplomacy will therefore beat within a few hours to the rhythm of our exchanges and our reflections in Hong Kong. Tonight, Hong Kong is indeed part of the great effervescence of the debate of ideas, and invited artists, entrepreneurs, experts, and researchers are in tune with the global theme of the Night of Ideas 2018. This event invites us to discuss the major technological changes at work and their impact on our societies, artistic creation, education, and also on the professional world. It is meant to be a dialogue and an exchange on the singular points of view, and the solution to be developed collectively in the face of the challenge of technology. I would like to warmly thank our moderators and the eminent French and Hong Kong thinkers and artists who are present tonight to discuss with us this major contemporary issue of artificial intelligence. I'm sure that their point of view, their experiences in this matter will be able to challenge us and to nourish our reflection. Before giving the floor to our excellent guests, I would like to conclude by insisting on the desire of France to offer, through the celebration of ideas, new spaces of public debates and privileged spaces of power. Thank you very much and good evening.
Merci, Monsieur le Consul Général. Now it's my pleasure to announce the beginning of the first roundtable. Let's give a round of applause to our speakers, Dr. Tua Cham, Chief Public Mission Officer, Hong Kong Cyberports. Dr. Samuel K.W. Chu, Associate Professor, Division of Information and Technology Studies, Faculty of Education at the University of Hong Kong. Mr. Charles Gillet, Chief Information Officer, Société Générale Asia Pacific. Professor Di Kai Wu, Professor of Computer Science and Engineering, HKUST. And our moderator, Mr. Gerardo Salenjua, co-chairman of the Artificial Intelligence Society of Hong Kong. Mr. Salendra, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, good evening, ladies and gents. Today we have a group of great speakers, and we're going to be discussing the topic of artificial intelligence in education. Now, that's very controversial. There's a lot of things to discuss when it comes to education. But first, let me say a little bit about the background. So, when it comes to education, universities, there's two sides you can look at it. One of them is research, right? For the sake of the argument today, we won't be focusing on research of universities. We'll be focusing on the other side, which is teaching and preparing students for whatever comes next in life. Now, that being said, I would like to actually invite the speakers to give a 1-minute introduction. And before I do that, I always like to time the place. And I actually live a long time in Germany, so I'm going to try to finish exactly at 7:15. So if you see me looking at my phone, I'm just literally just timing. Should we start on the other side? Samuel? Just 1-minute introduction about yourself.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm an associate professor at Hong Kong University in the Faculty of Education in a division called Information and Technology Studies. My recent research has to do with gamified learning and some artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Toa?
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Toa Cham. I'm the Chief Public Mission Officer of Cyberport. So Cyberport, we have 1,000 startups. We incubate them and we nurture them. So most of them now are making use of different types of technologies to apply for different industry, including education. Hopefully, they can share with you more later.
How many of you have used Google Translate or Yahoo Translate or Microsoft Translate or Baidu Translate, anything like that? Oh, wonderful. So I pioneered those kinds of technologies. I was recruited straight out of Berkeley 26 years ago, where I did my PhD on the topic of pushing machine learning and probabilistic models into language AI, which for decades before that was dominated by logic-based, rule-based, knowledge-based systems. That's a war that we have more than won. We now continue to do, we've done many DARPA projects, European Union projects in collaboration to push the state of the art in translation learning technology, as well as in computer music, music AIs, and computational creativity.
So my name is Charles Gillette. I'm the Chief Information Officer for SocGen, Société Générale. So it's a large bank in Asia. So I manage a few hundred software engineers in the region. I think I can come here with some view as to how artificial intelligence can apply to corporate in the banking industry, and what does it mean for us in terms of day-to-day and how we can use it in order to build a better information system platform for banks.
Excellent. Last but not least, I'm Gerardo Salendra, or you can call me Jerry. And I'm the chairman of the Artificial Intelligence Society of Hong Kong. I used to work in IBM and Google. Most recently, I'm one of the startups at Cyberport, one of the 1,000 startups, Cyberport. And we use artificial intelligence to improve communication between company employees and customers using something that it's commonly referred to as chatbots. Now, before we get started, just to set the environment for this talk, what is artificial intelligence? And in one sentence, artificial intelligence is simply a system or a computer that is smart enough to reach a goal in a vast amount of environments. So if you have a computer who reaches a set of processes and it only works if the environment is fixed, it's not very intelligent, right? But if you have software that doesn't matter where you put it, starts reaching the objective that you want it to get to, then when it starts becoming intelligent. And this is important to know because automation has been there for a long time. And now we're all talking about this industrial revolution 4.0. And then we're just talking about, okay, now all the jobs that were just very repetitive are going away. And the jobs that we're taking away now, the new jobs disappearing in the next 5 years, do actually require a little bit of thinking. And that's what we're discussing tonight. Now, as the purpose of education, one of the purposes to bring people to the workplace, I would like to start discussing how's the workplace changes right now. What sort of talents are needed? What sort of talents are no longer needed? What type of jobs are going to disappear in the next 3 to 5 years? Who wants to take this one? Charles?
Yeah, I can start. As you know, the banks have been in the running for a very long time, so we have tons of legacy platforms. I'm sure my dear colleagues here from Cyberport and so on, they know what it's like to run a very old platform. And what we need to do is to see how we can actually change that and make it much more flexible and agile moving forward. And what we need to do is to attract people who are willing to change the information system, the way it's designed, maybe make it more modular in order to make it easier to adapt to the new changes. So we are working typically with fintechs in different areas. We are part of the Accenture Lab for the past 2 years, and we are working with them in order to partner and be able to complement our own platform with solutions that they can provide to us.
I think that's a many-layered question because, well, it begins with sort of this question of what AI is. There's actually a very wide range of things that today, with all the hype and the media bubble, people are labeling as AI. Sometimes it feels to me as if, you know, our grandmothers are doing AI. But, you know, I think it's it's really important to distinguish true AI, which is sometimes called strong AI or artificial general intelligence, from weak AI. Like 99% of what we hear being buzzed about right now is weak AI, in the sense that while they are adaptive and they are able to do some machine learning, they still don't come close to the human intelligence of a 3-year-old child. That is the true test. Our best AIs, all the hype about deep learning and big data today, you know, yeah, they're cleverly taking advantage of the vast amount of data we've now put online with the internet and so on, with massively parallel computation and GPUs. But if you think about it, the amount of data these systems require and the search spaces that these learning algorithms are trying to find the right solution in, they are typically in the order of quintillions of hypotheses and so forth. And just to put that in perspective, a 3-year-old child masters its native mother tongue after hearing only, and here I want to challenge you to fill in the blank, how many words? How many words has a child heard their entire lifetime before they have mastered their mother tongue? It's about 15 million words. There is an awful lot of zeros between 15 million and the amount of big data training. So like when we talk about where AI needs to, where jobs in the future are going to be, I think we need to be aware that we are still 2 or 3 paradigm shifts in AI away from the true incredible potential of where AI is going. And so when we're preparing for the jobs of the future, are we talking about today and tomorrow? Because many of my friends in Charles' position and elsewhere are facing these problems where we're still seeing banks using systems from the 1950s. They're still based on COBOL. And so these are very real problems. At the same time, the disruption that is coming from AI technologies today may enable more agile players to catapult systems that are still, companies that are still shackled to those legacy constraints. So how do we train our kids to tackle those problems today? But then also, how do we train our kids to be able to attack those paradigm shifts 2, 3 generations away, which in the coming 10 to 15 years are going to transform civilization and culture far beyond any of the disruption that we have already seen?
I think a lot of people worry about tomorrow because of AI, right? So the topic for today is AI for society. So for us, like Cyberport, we have been seeing so many startups. So a startup is very different from other, like really, really pure research. We are trying to put things really happen, become a reality. So whether it's education, how we can apply AI to help the teachers, for example, help the student to learn better. So everybody, if you know Hong Kong, the people are so busy, including myself. So I would say that I think AI right now is in the stage is Have you heard about the definition of AI? Another definition of AI is 3 A's. The first A is automation. The second A is augmentation. And the third A is amplification. So I think in the next 5 years, what we see is probably the first 2 A's. You will save some time because of the automation, and we spend the time you save, resources you save, to do more, for example, analytic job, right? And then you can help the people to make better decisions rather than raising your resources and make wrong decisions. I think in the future time, no one knows whether they will replace us or not, but at least for the next 5 years, we will see that a lot of people are trying to apply the AI technologies into their daily life. I give you an example. One of our startups is called Find Solution. They are doing education tech. So what they do is everybody using an iPad or iPhone. So what they do is to capture the emotion of the kids when they are learning. So by capturing this kind of data, so they can analyze it and help the teacher and help the parents to design a better path for the children to learn. So those are the things we're seeing a lot of our startups trying to apply the technologies into our daily lives. So that's what we see so far.
I'd like to follow up on this automating idea regarding AI with one tool that I developed several years ago called Reading Battle. For now, actually, that hasn't really applied AI yet, but it actually automates learning. What it does is it tries to excite students about reading and then help them improve their reading ability using a gamified e-quiz platform. It's working very well. Some kids in the past, they had no interest in reading at all. And now because of this gamified environment, it's like a wonderland. And so many children begin to read and read a lot. And for the top performers, I'm amazed that they actually have consumed over 400 books, and then followed by some consuming over 300 books. And not only reading the books, but for each book, they have answered approximately about 15 questions that test their understanding about the book. And so that really can change education a lot already because it has already helped many kids develop not just their reading ability, but also their writing ability. And so has changed some students basically performing very poorly in school in the past, but now they have become top students in school. And all this we are talking about students learning on their own through this gamified automated learning system. And now the next step that I'm going to do for this Reading Battle 2.0 is to add in AI. So through machine learning, then the system will learn the reading pattern of the student, just like Amazon. Then you will recommend books for children to read that they may also be interested in, or recommending them books that they don't usually read, but then try to encourage them so that they can expand their scope in reading. Now, in terms of teachers, in fact, many teachers are very scared of this automated learning, the coming of AI in education, because they're afraid that they may be losing their job. Now, in fact, if they don't learn, 50% of them will lose their job. So all teachers need to learn, lifelong learner. And also that AI will take up the lower level of work, the more repetitive kind of work. But then the teacher with AI, with big data analytic, can easily understand the progress of every single student. And so now can really work as a facilitator in student learning. We've been talking about it for quite some time, but very few people are actually doing it. But with AI, this is actually possible. And so teachers can then do work at a much higher level and also help students to learn more individually.
So are we going to lose our jobs? The answer usually, well, always is it depends. Depends on what is, how good are you at your job? And that has been the same question 20 years ago. But why this time? It's because this conversation is getting serious. It's because AI in the near future, what's going to change is this low-level tasks. Doesn't matter what job you have, there's always a moment you're doing repetitive work every single time. Can be copy pasting something, can be just checking something somewhere else. And that's the type of job that's going to go away in the near future. Really, we're talking about the next 3 years, right? So that's not going to replace your job, not at all. But what's going to make you it's going to make you more efficient. So the job that before could be done by 10 people, now it's going to be able, 8 people are going to be able to do the exact same job, maybe 6, maybe 4. So that is how elimination is happening. It's not because a new powerful AI is going to come very soon and completely take over a job. No, you're going to start seeing tools becoming each time more efficient until the person in your team which has the lower performance is going to end up going away. It's going to continue. In the middle term, it gets kind of tricky because each time more creative tasks are going to be automated. And in the very long term, we have something that DK mentioned, which is generative models. So we really are going to be talking about AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. And fun fact, we actually have one of the world leading scientists in Artificial General Intelligence here in Hong Kong. His name is Ben Gersley. He's a Science Park working at Hands-on Robotics. And you can read his papers. And he very clearly tells you, we're not close to getting a computer who can think exactly like a human. We're not close. He says that himself, he believes it could be 10 to 20 years. But of course, I have a long experience working with programmers, and every time they said this is going to take 1 month, and start taking 7 months. So, so then we're about to see what happens here. The next question is, going back to talent and skills. What are the type of talent skills that you think are going to be needed moving forward? And you mentioned someone being well-rounded or someone being able to have flexible mind to break the status quo. What else can you think about?
We used to hire people who had banking backgrounds just because it was what we needed, back in the, let's say, just recently, like 3-5 years ago. And we are changing completely this approach because first, talents are rare, so we need to find them and find them where they are. Second, what we find out as well is that if you have people who are talented, young, curious, who wants to learn and are bringing, a very good level of technicity and in the job, it's actually quite easy to pick up the job. So what we want here is really to hire people who are willing to work in an environment which is agile, fun as well, and who are willing to develop competence in the job. But we are really trying here to stay away from the banking industry as a whole, but really saying, okay, we have developed an organization which is fairly alike, and maybe a bit of a stretch, but what you can find in Spotify or Google using agile methodologies and so on. And we organized a hackathon, by the way, last year. The people who are actually the students, actually they're part of your universities, they were very happy and surprised to see how a bank which is 150 years old is able to actually adapt so fast in a new way of delivering solution. But yes, it's always a challenge because we are basically competing with the startups and the Google and Facebook of.
Yeah, startups move fast nowadays. And I'm not saying that because I work at one. Now, I will actually leave you for the end because I have a special question for you. Samuel, what do you think are the skills of the future?
To my understanding, an Australian medical school now, they look for different ability and skills in students when they decide to take in new medical students. I learned that about half a year ago at a conference, and they said that well, in the past, of course, they mainly look at grades, but now they actually look more at the soft skill, communication skills, because with AI, computer can actually replace a lot of memory tasks always performed by doctors, but then the doctors now, they really need to be good at communication skill. Just like what I said earlier, that teachers need to be facilitator. Then they cater to the individual needs of the student. So doctor also, they really need to understand each patient very well and then offer them very good individual advice. Now, and then the artistic skill is going to be very important. And this is very interesting because I find that these days people seems to be decreasing in their aesthetic ability. Let me give you a very real example. Just a couple of weeks ago, for one of my projects, we contract out a job about $1 million worth, and then we hired them to write a gaming platform for us. And of course, it involved design. And then the design work was done very poorly. And I explained to the two programmers there that why it was bad. And it really surprised me that they couldn't even understand what I said, why it's bad. Now, they are good at programming, but they are very bad at design. Yeah, so I told them that your team is fantastic in programming, but you need to bring in a person who's good at artistic. Yeah, so I think, so communication skills, artistic skills are going to be very important, cannot be replaced by AI.
Dr. Toa?
Well, I just echo Professor what he just said. I'll give you an example. So about half a year ago, so we have been doing a lot of hackathons in Cyberport. So one of the hackathons we did is together with IBM and Hang Seng Bank. So the topic is chatbot. So the student has to come to Cyberport for 2 days, doing camping in Cyberport for 2 days. And then they have to understand the problem, and then they have to write the code using IBM Watson, the API, and then they produce a prototype of chatbot. So they're going to, they chose the final 3 winners. So I'm one of the judges. You know what? One of the winning teams, when they got the award and say something out, no one know IT at all. They're all coming out from social welfare, faculty, I think probably artistic, all different kind of things, not technical at all. But they're one of the final 3 winners out of those 100 teams. So what they really inspire me is these days, the people learning AI, not necessarily they have to be very technical, but you have to have a team with multiple different types of knowledge together. There's one solid example I can give you. So I can give you a lot of successful startups. They are coming out of a mix of talents. One of the startups, besides Five Solutions, the other one, we chatbot, one's called Clara AI. The founder is a very technical guru, AI expert, but the other founder is a beautiful lady, don't know anything about AI, but has been working for a bank as a customer service manager. So now they have a huge customer traction. They're doing so well. So I think definitely we need to have a mix of talents in order to move it, really make it a reality for the society. Yeah.
So we heard a little bit about soft skills, we have about communication skills, we heard about being well-rounded and flexible, but we also heard a lot about creativity. And that's where you come in place. Do you think that creativity is a skill that a computer will not be able to pick up?
I don't think that. Let me be clear. The jobs that we're used to are going away. Even with the weak AI that is dominating for the next 10, 20 years, the jobs are going away. Yes, it's comforting to think, oh, many of these jobs will still be here. The fact is, if you think about it, these things didn't exist 10 years ago. That is, I mean, can any of you live without these anymore? This is how fast things are changing, and it's only accelerating right now. We have one person who's brave to live without it. I think that we are, we have to face up to this challenge, which means that we have to re-architect some of our socioeconomic assumptions about how we are going to sustain the economic livelihood of people. At the same time, we have to think what kind of jobs remain. You hear people talking about this as if it's, you hear the phrase, the 4th Industrial Revolution. This is not the 4th Industrial Revolution. This is like nothing we have ever seen before. Again, people are trying to understand what's going on by making reference to something familiar. That's why you hear people saying it's the 4th Industrial. Look, the Industrial Revolution was about automation of muscle. This is something else completely. This is automation of thought. This is automation of those things that make us uniquely human. And when we talk about creativity, there's only one thing that humans do better than all other animal species. What is that? It's language and music. we don't run faster, we don't smell better, we don't fly higher, we are weak, we are a pretty pathetic species on the whole, except for our ability to learn and construct new languages and make use of them for abstract thought and creation. And by the way, language and music are almost the same thing. Our ancestors were singing before they were talking. We evolved our linguistic abilities by scaffolding on the neurological evolution of, if you look across the other animal species, the very few species that actually can sing creatively or even imitatively are dolphins and whales, a very few species of birds like parrots and ravens and cockatoos, and a very few number of primates, including us. And those are all, not by coincidence, the most intelligent species of their families. So what do we need to enable people to have the kind of creativity that can survive at least the first several waves of the AI revolution? We need to get people to train themselves outside of narrow coding skills. I know it's a rage. Everybody wants to teach their kids to code. This is not going to be the future. The way people are being taught to code right now is by teaching coding paradigms from the 1960s and 1970s, dressed up. This is not the future. All that stuff is going away. The creative stuff will be the last stuff to go. That means training the kids in humanities, arts, music. The last time I was on this stage, so I'm a musician as well. Asia Society mostly knows me as a performing musician, and in fact, that lovely camera person over there was the flamenco dancer in the last performance we did on this stage. That is the sort of thing that we need to be taking our engineering students out of and getting them to explore so that they are not just trying to play catch up with the lessons of last year, with the lessons of the Industrial Revolution. They need to be free to be thinking, what is going to happen that the world has never seen before, and how am I going to be part of that?
So what I find very interesting is that everyone said pretty much the exact same thing with different words. We really went from these two programmers who were missing this skill to look at how people are going to use the UI. Then we have the example of Dr. Toa said that they have this incredible team. One of them is a super engineer, but the other one doesn't know how to program at all, but still they're doing very well. And then we hear more about how creativity is becoming important, because programming is not necessarily what's going to be the future. And that's something I found very interesting, because I read a lot of news saying every children needs to now learn how to program. They need to learn how to code. And I think that's a misconception. I don't think that's right. I like the idea of programming for one reason, because it teaches you how to think, not because you're ever going to need it in your job. There's people who are going to love doing it and people who are going to hate doing it. If you're the people who are going to hate doing it, there's a lot of other skills that are going to be required in the future, possibly even more than programming. And that's the scary part, because at Google we actually did experiments where you actually had algorithms building themselves, or programs programming another programs. And very often, the code out of the program programming another one was leaner, was nicer to understand, and better at performing a task than the one you're going to give to one of your leading programmers. So I'm not saying that's the future. I'm saying that in a research lab has happened that before. I don't know if that's going to continue. So now I would like to take the conversation a little bit forward to education. And let's start. We already discussed what are the skills of the future. Do you think universities, and let's narrow it down, in Hong Kong are changing, are adapting fast enough for the workplaces of tomorrow? Anyone can pick this one
up. I think we are improving. We are going to the right direction. So I think when we try to look for talents for ourselves and also for our startups, we are seeing that university like Hong Kong U, they actually have a master program in business analytics right now. And same for other major universities like UST. They are training a lot of people, whether they previously only PhD know something about AI. How about a bachelor degree and master degree? and even the VTC, vocational school. Right now, we are seeing that most of the universities, they're offering different levels of AI, big data, that sort of program to coming out. So I think in the next few years, probably we have more talents in that area. But and the other thing is whether the students are interested to study this kind of field is very important. I give an example. I think it's very important to inspire the next generation to have interest to pick up this and learn this kind of thing. And what is AI? Why I want to learn about it? Why I want to be good at this? So this year, we have a very interesting competition again in Hong Kong. So, you know, everybody heard about AlphaGo, right? So this is playing Go with AI machine engine. So Hong Kong, we have the Hong Kong version of AlphaGo. We are not playing Go, we are playing Chinese chess. So I think in summer, just a few months ago, so we have over 1,000 primary and secondary students in Hong Kong playing Chinese chess with an AI engine. So that's the way we go, trying to inspire the very young kids when they were very young. Okay, they understand what's AI, play around it, have interest on it. So when they go to university, they will, okay, I want to learn about AI. I want to be good at that. So I think that is another levels. So from the very beginning, inspire them, whether the university, they have good program, but the last thing that we're trying hard to do, how to retain the expert in AI in Hong Kong. So this is a challenge, still is a challenge, because everywhere there's lack of AI expert. So they will use different type of things to get those talents to work for them. Same for companies. So I think that is something we need to still work hard on that. Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest advantages of agreeing to join the founding faculty of HKUST over 25 years ago was being able to shape how we built the computer science and engineering department there, which is it's one of the biggest departments on campus. And one of the things I helped to influence very strongly there was that we made 1/4 of the department, 1/4 of the professors are AI, which was unheard of at that time. And not just that, 90% of those were hired in machine learning. In the early 1990s, that was unheard of. The field was dominated by logic-based, rule-based, knowledge-based people. We couldn't even get the mainstream establishment to publish our machine learning papers. But being able to do that has given us, this is how HKUST's international rankings in such fields catapulted so quickly to the top in the world, because we were ahead of that. And I think this is one of the things that where we're trying very strongly to arm our students, both at an undergraduate level and at a postgraduate level, to create this. But you know, we need partners on the other end, because one of our biggest problems has been, even once we've trained them, you know, and my group, for example, is hugely international at the PhD level by design. Along every axis you measure, nationality, race, gender, orientation, whatever, we have a perfect diversity. But the problem is the vast majority go overseas. My French PhD student is now a professor at University of Maryland. The next one immediately got snatched up in Ottawa for the National Research Council of Canada. You know, we have this problem that there needs to be a receptacle for this. And so the flip side of this is that we're trying to really up the third aspect of our mission besides research and teaching, which is to help create this ecosystem that we see in other parts of the world, where you want to stay and found entrepreneurial companies. This is, you know, so I teach also the tech entrepreneurship class at HKUST. And between that class and the AI class I'm teaching next semester, the students are just like beating down the doors, which is encouraging, but it doesn't help if they then take it somewhere else. So we need assistance from the companies here and from the ecosystems like Cyberport, Science Park, and so on. But even more importantly, from the finance and high-tech startup management sphere. That is what is really missing. We have this gigantic gap between what I'm used to in Silicon Valley and San Francisco in terms of the level of skill and the amount of it around. You want to get people like this in your founding team, you can do it. But here, the business talent lies in more traditional industries, which is a very, very different management mindset. And so those are areas where we would really love to discuss with all of these people and with you, how can we band together to create that ecosystem? Because we have Shenzhen right across the border, which is this incredible resource. And we have Hong Kong here. And Hong Kong has an excellent opportunity to become the San Francisco to this region's Silicon Valley. But there are at least 5 different steps we have to do across government, industry, finance, startup management, and university R&D to really complete that cycle.
I think we have a lot to talk about. Well, I'm not in a position to comment on the universities over here, obviously, but maybe I can share one very specific example that I had last year, which was actually quite enlightening for me. Maybe make you laugh because it's actually a kind of old stuff. But last year I was talking with some of my staff, developers mostly. They were telling me that they were doing some online course classes, so it's mostly Coursera and Udacity. I'm pretty sure you know that already. I'm sure you're going to touch on these particular topics on education. And they were telling me basically that they enlist through classes outside of the work, so basically just for their own purpose. And it's a class that they do online. It takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get a certification. They pay it on their own, actually. They do it when they want. It's on demand. The quality of the training itself is actually quite good. There are some of them, I believe it's Udacity. If you certify, Google is offering you a job, a guaranteed job, I believe. It's Udacity, I believe. And it costs $80, I guess, or something like that. So I was amazed. You know, basically, I'm being offered right now to have high quality, on demand, flexible, very cheap training online, and I thought, well, probably I should promote it much more within the company. So that's what I started to do last year. I said, look, guys, if you want to do a training, pick up whatever you like. It's personalized because they're going to pick up exactly what is needed for them. And if your direct managers believe it's relevant for your job, just do it, and you can claim the expense, and the company will pay for it. I think it looks kind of obvious because it's been there for a while now, but I think it's more a statement about how much we need to change the way we train people. It's for companies, of course, but I think that education in general has still a lot to do in order to be much more flexible, much closer and personalized with regard to what our people want.
Samuel?
I like to mention a white paper published by a World Economic Forum just last year. It talks about what education need to do as a response to AI or the fourth industrial revolution. Now, so they mentioned quite a number of things. I like to highlight a couple. One is what Dekai mentioned earlier regarding languages, the importance of languages. That we need to help students to develop, and which is something that's rather hard to be replaced by AI. And then another thing I'd like to mention is digital literacy that can be viewed as consisting of 3 elements: IT literacy, information literacy, and the media literacy. Now, regarding whether schools and universities have done enough to help students equipped with this and other skills to prepare for this AI world. Now, regarding language, you might have heard from the news in the past several days that in Baptist University, the university admin tried to push that every student in the future, when they graduate from BU, they need to be able to speak Putonghua pretty well. Now, in fact, this is a good policy, I have to say. Probably not just at university level, but perhaps also at the secondary school level, even maybe primary school level. And this is going to help the student a lot. But then sometimes the students may not realize the importance, or also that they may think there may be a political agenda behind this language policy. Anyway, now I'd like to talk more about digital literacy. Now, although maybe not everybody need to be a good programmer, but these days, unavoidably, students should really become well-versed with all kinds of technology that can help them to learn, and then in the future, they may use it design game or design some AI tools to facilitate learning. And then in the future, facilitate the operation in companies. Now, I like to say that regarding this Education Bureau in Hong Kong has been trying to do a lot. Yeah, for example, they would give a lot of money to every school to spend on e-learning. Although sometimes teachers may not have enough knowledge to know how to use those money wisely yet. But then I think there's a learning curve. So sooner or later, then the teachers will catch up with their learning. And in universities, there are also lots of schemes to encourage students to become entrepreneurs, or for teachers to encourage teachers to apply innovative teaching methods. Usually, that means applying some smart IT to facilitate teaching and learning. And for myself, I do find that I really have to practice what I said in the beginning regarding lifelong learning. So I always try to see what would interest students. And so I actually came up with a new course since last year on game-based learning. And it proves to be hugely popular among the students. Now, but then last year was my first offering of the course. And I still got complaint that some students said that, well, you said in the course outline that you gamify the course, but I really don't see that the course has been gamified that much. And so I think, how can I gamify the course much more? And so this time I'm teaching it right now, except for my first lecture, all other lectures are going to be done by the students. Then what do I do? Through what we call flipped classroom, I will still do my lecture in my own office. I'll take my lecture and then put it up on the learning management system before the class. And then during the lecture, I contract out the various topics that I would have been talking about to different groups of students. They will talk about it. And then everybody will comment. And then I will also comment. And then if they do a good job lecturing, then they get good, they get a lot of points or they get likes. Yeah, so we really have to be lifelong learning and also try to think how we can use IT to help students learn better. And this is also something that they need to learn.
So does Hong Kong has the capacity to become an important tech hub? I do believe so, for several reasons. First of all, I have two stories to tell. So one of them is through these talks, I actually met a professor from CTU. And this professor said that he's super happy with the program, but they're not moving as quickly as they wanted to, or this person wanted to. So he said, you know what, I would like to invite you and your team from Rocketbots. Can you come over and teach us, our students, how to make chatbots? I said, that sounds like a great opportunity. Let's check out how they react. It was exam week, the last day of exam week. So I honestly thought that nobody was going to show up. Like, who on their right mind will stop studying for the last exam after they're exhausted and spend the entire night building a chatbot? We had a full room. Was truly a very inspiring activity. You actually see people from all type of backgrounds, programming, literature, sitting down and making their own chatbot. And for me, that was fascinating because that's the moment I realized, what this much potential. There's people who actually realize what's really important. And I'm not saying grades are not important, but they're not as important as some other things are, as we discussed. This creativity, the soft skills to go through. So that's one of the stories. And the other thing is, I'm a proud alumni of the CUHK MBA, and they just recently revamped the entire program. And I thought that was a very risky move, but I saw the pensum. They have one major called digital entrepreneurship, which I wish I would have taken, right? even with as many years as I have in the technology field, for me, just fascinated like a university can move that quickly. I say, you know what? Everything that we have done in 20 last years is outdated. Next year, we'll do something completely new. So it's happening. It's happening. Now, we're going to move a little bit more about in universities or in high school and the whole education system. Are they leveraging the right technologies? Is there any way that we can teach our students better by leveraging artificial intelligence? And you mentioned gamification, yeah, with some machine learning in the background. What other examples can you think of, or how can we improve our teaching environment? Very specific question.
Okay, perhaps I can cite one more example. Now, since actually several years ago, 2-3 years ago, different professors in various parts of the world have been trying, say, auto tutor. So for one course in the US, that students ask question and then they got response from a computer for a few months, and they didn't realize they got answer from a computer. So it's until the course finished, and then they realized that they were actually learning the whole term from a computer. And actually something like that is becoming popular, and Hong Kong is also catching up. Now, besides Cyberport, Hong Kong Science and Technology Park is also doing great work in trying to apply AI and other technology to improve our learning and teaching. Now, one example I can quote is there's a startup in Science Park that they are trying to automate the question and answer happen in university libraries. And in fact, they are going to launch their trial almost immediately. And so just imagine in the past when a student go to the library and then ask a question, and then the reference librarian would then tell student, oh, okay, for this kind of assignment, then you can go to this kind of databases, and then use this kind of search techniques and with those search terms, and then find what you want. And now, so this friend I know in Science Park, they automate that. Yeah. And I'm quite sure that this is all possible, yeah, because as I mentioned earlier, even several years ago, some US university has done something like that in a course setting. Yeah.
So, I mean, there are certainly lots of tools that have come up, some of which are partly weak AI that are very useful. Many of us have participated in using, massively online courses so that our teachings are online, and the students can at least watch that ahead of time before interactive sessions and so on. And those are certainly useful. But I think that the hardest thing to teach is, those things are useful for rote memorization. They're useful for learning textbook materials, well understood materials. What they're not useful for is this hardest thing to teach, which is typically how to create. How do you teach a student to be creative? 99.9% of ideas that people come up with are horrible ideas in the end, right? How do you teach that process? And that is something that I think AI doesn't yet do. It's something that I think in terms of using AI to teach, we tend to think of, oh, how do you use AI to teach? Let's build an AI tool to do grading automatically or whatever automatically, right? But really, I think the most powerful way to use AI to teach is in areas of AI that we're involved with that involve things like computational creativity, computational arts, music, etc. Because I'll give you an example. So in recent years, our group built the world's first rap battle bot that learned completely by itself how to freestyle rap battle against you just by going out on the internet and looking at all the rap that's out there. How do you get students to imagine doing something like that that's never been seen before, as opposed to just imitating something that's already been done? The process of studying how computational AI models, how machine learning models can themselves be creative, forces students to think about what are creative processes. What is the cognitive science behind creativity? What makes something, a thought, a new idea, creative versus not creative? And so we also use AI to teach creativity by making people build AIs that themselves are creative and artistic, because that process gets you to start thinking about, how do I create? What is my process for being more creative in a good way?
Gents?
I don't know what to say.
You can just, yeah.
No,
You're always after him, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I know. Next time I will start, actually. No, I'm going to be very, simple and down to earth here. I mean, I'm a huge believer of AI being used as an assistant, and it really echoes what Dekai and Jerry were saying just before. Is that I think that we are going to be freed up from things that are kind of mundane and not of very high value, and we have tons. I shouldn't say that because there are people from SG here, but. We have tons of people who are highly skilled, master +2, 5, people in the bank who are doing tasks that are actually very low level. I mean, how come we can have people who've been studying for so many years to do things that are actually very simple and could be probably replaced by a very simple AI, what you call a weak AI. So I guess you refer to machine learnings and stuff like that, I guess. Yeah. So I think that's for me. I mean, in terms of tooling, in terms of being equipped, it's really about getting the train of getting machine learnings, automation that are a bit smart in order to do tasks that are today performed by human beings that are actually way overskilled for doing that. And I do agree with the fact that now we need to be much more on the front of creativity. But very good example, by the way. Very recently, you'll be amazed by that, is that we just hired UX and UI developers. UX is user experience. So basically, people who are more artists than developers, actually, because they design the interface, they make it nice to use, and typically what Apple actually started probably 10 years ago. So we start doing that. And we never really understood until recently how important it is to have an interface which doesn't require, a PhD to understand how to use it, or to have to call the help desk every time you have to press a button. I think that's extremely important. So I really concur with everything that was said before on that front. Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add to that?
The last one is very difficult, right? So I think, the only observation I will see learning from all this expert here is I think we are going to see a lot more artists, singers, painters, because it's the only way that you can survive in the future, right? So it's more creative, but it's just a joke. I think it will take a long time. So I think definitely the time right now is the 3 A's I just talked about. So we're helping a lot of startups really want to help people in industries to really make use of it and make it more effective and efficient. So I think this is take a few years, but at the end of the day, a lot of jobs will be replaced, definitely, yeah.
So last year I was invited to speak at a conference in Australia about artificial intelligence, and I was privileged enough to meet the team behind a technology that I think is going to change the classroom. They've been using quite a bit in Australia, and it's moving around the world. It failed in Italy for some reason, but what they do is very simple. They just recognize the importance of mentoring. They say classrooms are good, let's keep them like this for a while, but whenever you go home, this homework thing is not working out. People just copy it, people don't really care about it. You have this one kid out of 20 who actually is doing it and then outperforms the rest. It was just not working for them. So they said, okay, let's grab this very little part of the classroom, let them teach, and whenever they go home, they have their tablet, and the tablet will take you through what they should have learned that day. And this simple recap, the re-explanation of what happened, then a test. And this technology, very, very simple, very weak AI in the background of how you capture data, was enough to increase the end of the school exams by 20 to 30%. And that just teaches you that you don't have to start with a very complex problem. Starting with something very simple but actually gets used has a way stronger impact. So I think that that's one of the technology I would love to see coming over to Hong Kong, or my home country, as a matter of fact. So I think they're probably going to steal the tablets if that were to happen. All right, gents, this is the very last questions because we're really coming to the end of time. And it's around entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is changing. We're in a new era of entrepreneurs, and I find it very funny because everything is, we have this new business model called something plus AI. So it's like Airbnb plus AI. At one time I met actually someone who said toothbrush plus AI, and that, I kid you not, that's actually a business model, check it out. So you just grab things that already exist and you add AI to it. Doesn't have to be very advanced artificial intelligence. You can really just go to Amazon, take an online course, takes you 1 week, and start using it because there's enough data available. I would actually like to know, first of all, why you guys think about this upcoming wave of entrepreneurship. Second of all, how can universities or can we all prepare to be that type of entrepreneur that's going to be successful in the future? Yeah, actually, that was meant for you.
So entrepreneurship, definitely. I think this is, I think Professor also mentioned about the opportunities. And because even you have the top AI expert, you need to have opportunity for them to really apply it. So the market is very important. I think China, particularly in the Greater Bay Area we talk about, is very similar to Silicon Valley, or even better than that in terms of many dimensions. The market's there. And also, the technology adoption is very, very high in terms of the Greater Bay Areas. So Hong Kong, together with all the universities, Cyberport and Science Park, and all the international talents, so we can have a lot of AI technologies and then apply to a big market. They're very adaptive to different new innovation. I think that is very important. Investor, another point of view. So we're seeing a lot more investors, they're putting a lot of fund together on AI, ETF on AI. So that sort of thing I think is very good in terms of the foundation of Hong Kong. We do have a lot of funds and investors on that area. So I think this is a pretty good market. Also, we have a lot of funding from different type of investors. We have the top university around us, and we have international talents like yourself. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, it's very important for Hong Kong to nurture entrepreneurs like, you know, you can see the sample there. So I think this is definitely we can work together, and then we can benefit for all of them. Thank you.
I have amazing numbers of Silicon Valley colleagues and friends coming over here all the time. I've become like a tour guide because there's so much demand to come and see what HKUS is doing, and you know, like, oh wow, DJI came out of Hong Kong, out of HKUST, and to see Shenzhen and so forth. And at the same time, when I teach my undergraduate classes here, which are 80% local students, and I ask, how many of you have been across the border? Like, less than half the hands go up. And I'm sitting there going, have you guys got any idea what you are throwing away? When the world's, you know, biggest tech industry is falling over themselves to come over here and see what's going on, and you're like, oh, we just want to stay in Mongkok and sing karaoke. You know, like, so there's a lot of push that we need to do to make this happen. And I think that one of the really important things, you know, I was talking about teaching creation, teaching creativity. To do that requires getting ahead of the curve. This has traditionally been our problem. You know, Hong Kong education system has traditionally been very good at teaching very rigorously stuff that's already known, textbook knowledge. And even since the first .com boom, you know, when we had built and commercialized the first web translation AI ever in 1995, 96. You know, people were like, oh, that's cool, but what is it? Because it wasn't the Hong Kong version of X that I already know about in the US. Okay, it wasn't the Chinese pets.com or whatever, right? And those were the things that were getting funding because of that mentality of not understanding how to create, but of understanding how to build something. And one of the most important things is to teach this distinction between being a tool user versus a tool builder, a tool creator. It's very easy now to take something off the shelf and adapt it so you can have your AI toothbrush and so on. But what is really going to be your differentiator? For some lucky few, that will work. But you have to think a little bit past that also. What can you build? Not just grab a tool off the shelf. What tool can you build? Because those are the powerhouses that have been created. Okay, when Google came out of nowhere, when Netscape came out of nowhere, when when this came out of nowhere, it's like nothing that's ever been seen before. We're creating an entire new tool, an entire new platform, and that is the sort of thing that I would like to challenge us to help create the ecosystem for. DJI did it. Nobody really knew what a drone was. Now they have 70% of the world's enormous market. We need more of those.
Samuel. Sorry, Charles. You last one again.
No, I believe that everyone actually need to learn to be entrepreneurial. Whether a student plan to work in a big company or startup, all the same. Why? Well, because we all know that actually many big companies are going bankrupt. Yeah, are being replaced by startup. Yeah, and that's why employees in the future or even now all need to be entrepreneurial. And that's why we also need to teach that in school. And I like to link three ideas together. That is creativity, and then the innovation, and then entrepreneurship. And I like to give a couple examples. One example is what I'm doing for the primary students in Hong Kong. Earlier I mentioned I have a reading battle that actually hasn't really applied AI yet, although 2.0 will apply AI. But anyway, this thing would already take care of the simple teaching, how to read, how to write. And then what do teachers do? Yeah. So in one of my projects, then I actually try to foster the next generation authors with these small kids who have read many books and answer many questions quite well in reading battle. I invite them. I invite almost 30 of them, and they got excited. Yeah, and so we give them training on creative writing. They can write whatever they want, no boundary. So that's one way. And then another example I'd like to mention is at the university with my gaming course. This year, I am partnering with Science Park, maybe in the future, Cyberport. So the students, they need to, in group, create a game for all kinds of learning, in business, in education, whatever. And they need to start with a proposal, and then the best 10 teams, they will be nominated to join a Science Park early startup scheme that they will go to Science Park for 2-day training regarding how they may commercialize their game in the future. And yeah, so we really need to do a lot of this creativity, innovation, and then hopefully through that process in the future, we can help create a lot more entrepreneurs from our students.
Charles, you get the closing remarks here.
I got big responsibility, I guess. Well,
that's the only thing everyone's going to remember.
Wow.
No pressure.
Just a few words on entrepreneurship. I think that's very important topic for large corporates. Why? Because usually large corporates, they tend to crush, innovation. They don't do it so well just because there's an organization which is pretty rigid, actually. I'm not talking about ESG specifically here, but in general, large corporates. And usually the innovation process within the organization, it turns out sometimes to be a bit of a beauty contest more than actually trying to push innovation forward. So what we are doing is more to work with external companies, startups, fintechs, who are really coming with this entrepreneurship mindset, and it's really refreshing to spend time with them, because usually it really partners up quite well with them. Why? Because they come with the flexibility, they come with the ideas, they come with usually very disruptive ways of doing the same things. but they lack the knowledge of the clients, they lack the knowledge of what is a regulator, they lack knowledge of what is the business process that is actually making the bank run. So usually it's a very good partnership to work with fintechs and startups in general to bring the entrepreneurs in the bank and we work together to get to work on something that is better in the end.
And with that, we come to an end. Samuel, Toa, DK, Charles, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And good night, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Salendra, Professor Charm, Dr. Chu, Mr. Gillet, and Professor Wu for this very insightful discussion. Now I would like to invite all of you to the courtyard to enjoy some refreshments and the VR installations which will be available throughout the evening. The first VR showcase, Brain Factory Speculative Neurodesign, is produced by artists Mr. Benayoun, Klein and Barrière. The second showcase, Wild Immersion, the Virtual Reserve, is produced by Adrien Moisson and Fabio Nico. We will see you back in here at the theater at 8 for the AI art performance. But please kindly note that your seat will not be reserved and that all seats in the room will be allocated on the first come, first served basis when you return. Finally, allow me to remind you that smoking is strictly forbidden in the premises. Thank you very much for your attention, and please enjoy the refreshments and VR installations. And of course, please feel free to discuss with the panelists if you have any questions on the theme discussed. Wow, that was mesmerizing. Thank you very much for this very impressive performance. And to learn more about it, I would like to call on stage Mr. Pierre Blaise Dionnet, co-founder and director of CityShake Hong Kong, to give us a few words about this performance. Okay, just a second. Okay. Okay. So here we go.
Hi everyone. My name is Pierre, and I run a small digital innovation studio with my partner Ilmari Aikinen, who's sitting in front of the room. I'd like to thank the artist Isabelle Franck, that we flew all the way from France, and Laurent Robin, amazing jazz drummer and who lives all over the place. France, Asia, other places. Yeah, so on the theme of artificial intelligence, we presented you this artwork, which is interactive. I hope you guys understood that it was not like synced, but interactive. This experience interacts with music and movement. So the objective of this artwork is to invent a new form of art expression that unifies on one single canvas music, dance, and visual art. Why air? Because the idea was like to take like a very to depict through to invite you and embark on a journey through a neuronal network that is an abstract expression of artificial intelligence, and you know give a poetic expression of it. You know, AI is usually very heavy. We have like an industrial approach of it, you know, technical, economic, So the idea here was like to take the exact opposite and create a neuronal network and appreciate the beauty of it. Sorry. Maybe I give you a bit of detail about this project, because this is part of an innovation project that we're working on, which is what we call music and movement. So the idea is, so here I show you an example of a performance, the first performance that we did to actually present the project. The idea is to bring together music and movement, and that comes from research work that two research works that one is about music data visualization, that's called Music Vision. There is a lot of work that has been done from our side about data visualization, expressing music visually, being able to learn music visually through logical shapes. So that's one part of the origin of this project. And the other one is what we call augmented movement. It's to develop interactive content that create an extension of a choreography. So here there is a lot of work being done about, a natural movement done by Isabelle is enhanced in a natural way. So it's going to be, for instance, like the inspiration of taking a handful of sand and throwing it in the air, and we need to extend that time of movement. So that's what we've been working on with Isabelle and Ilmarie. So that's I hope you liked it. I share with you like another little experience about that's what we do basically. Why do I share this with you? It's because we can create a scenario. Every experience is different. So here, like the theme was artificial intelligence, but for this experience was a different inspiration. It was for a band called Ultraviolet. So the inspiration was, everything that is beyond the spectrum of visual light, the dark light. So we created this kind of holographic scenography with blue light, and also those kind of immersive cage. And you see like the interaction, unfolding. So also I want to share, to finish with you, like the creation process, because it invents like a new way of creating, and it's a constant dialogue between the dancer and the musicians. So here we were very happy to bring Laurent and Isabelle, because everything was semi-improvised, and this kind of experience has the idea of putting human talent at the very center of the experience. And also, it's the idea of living a unique moment. Each experience is different because it's semi-improvised, it interacts with each movement, etc. That's it. Do you have any question? Yeah.
As a sensor or just the camera?
Yeah. It's actually a very simple sensor. It's infrared camera. Yeah. That's not the the sensor part is actually all figured out by tech developers.
What were the limitations of this room for you?
Yeah, that was like the challenge was to actually adapt the performance to the room. Yeah, that's the challenge.
And technically, what you didn't could show us because of this limitation?
Well, so for instance, in this experience, like the scenography enhances the whole experience, right? Here it's a bit flat. We have a wall that is not exactly perfect. We need to align everything. We brought our own projector to make sure that we control the content. And also there is one thing that is like key is the responsiveness of the hardware, because it's real-time 3D, and the no delay is the holy grail. Yeah, yeah. After we're gonna leave the experience, so you guys can come on stage and try it, and yeah, of course you can. The music can. And a big round of applause for the artist.
Well, yes, thank you very much. So, well, after the second round table at 9:30, you can actually come on stage and try this very interesting installation. So, well, thanks again for Mr. Donnet for sharing with the audience. That was actually the perfect introduction to the second round table of the night on artificial intelligence and artistic creation. I would like to welcome on stage our speakers, Professor Lai Tzu Fan, Professor of Digital Media at the Department of Cultural Studies at the Lingnan University, Professor Maurice Benayoun, artist, theorist, and curator, professor at the School of Creative Media at the City University. Mr. Paul Haswell, a lawyer, partner for Pins and Masons, radio host, and DJ. And last but not least, let's welcome our moderator, Mrs. Joanne Chan, Managing Director of Per Artem Lumen Limited. Well, Ms. Yuan Chen, maybe while we work on this technical issue, maybe you can give us a brief introduction on the on this matter, on this discussion.
Well, that was a most beautiful show just now. I've never seen anything like that. Mesdames, Messieurs, bonsoir. Nous sommes ravis de vous avoir réunis ce soir en très grand nombre à la première édition de la Nuit des idées à Hong Kong autour du thème « L'imagination au pouvoir ». Nous allons débuter cette deuxième table ronde de la nuit où l'idée est de questionner les implications de l'intelligence artificielle dans les modes de création artistique et numérique et de réfléchir aux formes et aux interactions qu'elle est susceptible de prendre dans le futur. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today at the very first edition of the Night of Ideas in Hong Kong on a discussion around all power to the imagination. We're now on to the second discussion of the night on the impacts and implication of artificial intelligence on artistic creation. We'll start with a panel discussion of 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A, and then workshop and mingling after. Recently, Louvre Abu Dhabi was opened at the United Arab Emirates, and I have had the great pleasure to attend its opening. It is a most beautiful place inside and out, and I urge all of you to visit when you have a chance. In the opening speech, French President Macron quoted a character by the Russian writer Dostoevsky as saying, "La beauté sauvera le monde." Beauty will save the world. President Macron went on to use the word beauty 9 more times in his speech. And in a speech by Pope Benedict XVI during his meeting with artists, he emphasized the absolutely essential role of beauty in human life. Well, guess who he turned to for support? He also quoted Dostoevsky, and the Pope said the following: Dostoevsky's words that I'm about to quote are bold and paradoxical, but they invite reflection. He says this: "Men can live without science. He can live without bread. But without beauty, he could no longer live, because there would no longer be anything to do to the world. The whole secret is here. The whole of history is here." The French painter Georges Braque echoes this sentiment, and he said, "Art is meant to disturb. Science reassures." All these sayings really do get us thinking. If beauty is the ultimate pursuance of art and life, can art created by machines, which in human standards have no emotions, be considered art? Can beauty be found in art created by AI? How should art be defined if created by machines? Do machines have creativity? Will machines replace the role of artists in the future? What are the ethical implications of AI in artistic creations? Well, with all these questions, I would like to start our dialogue of the impacts and implications of artificial intelligence on artistic creation. We have a very international panel of speakers here. Ms. Fan Lai Chi, who is originally from Canada, Mr. Paul Haswell, who is from England, and Mr. Maurice Benayoun, who is originally from France. They're all living in Hong Kong right now. So ladies first, Ms. Fan Lai Chi has a background in cultural studies and communication, and she's particularly interested in electronic literature. She's currently a professor of digital media, culture, and narrative in the Department of Cultural Studies at Lingnan University. So without further ado, may I pass the floor to her to give her presentation.
It is on. Okay. Thanks all for coming, and a big thanks to Zoe and Joanne for inviting me to participate tonight, as well as for organizing this panel through which we can start a discussion on the idea and perhaps status of artistic creativity in an age of ubiquitous digital media and increasing trends towards automated creation. As I talk to you briefly about creativity and the role of artists then, now, and next, I want to ground my thoughts in with 2 notes. First, I'll be speaking about the phenomenon of generative writing, or when AIs and algorithms are used to do the work of creative writing. Words and phrases are gathered in a database or sometimes online, and algorithms pull from them to form sentences formulaically, resulting in machine-generated poems, prose, even full screenplays or novels. And second, I'm contextualizing this kind of automated creativity relative to digital content production as it stands today. And perhaps that's where I'll start, with the observation that the production of content and also of cultural objects that include artistic works have always been wrapped up in the tools that create them. And whether we make out of need, as with a wheel or a painting that embodies cultural knowledge, or we make out of leisure and consumption, as with products, goods, and devices to be sold, maybe we make out of critique, as with a biting essay or an artistic installation, as we've been seeing. Always, always is production bound up in the tools of creation. And what we're led to consider now, then, is a shift in creation and creativity as cultural practice. Whoever makes content makes culture. And for several decades, if not centuries, the question has been, who gets to create? Or perhaps whose creativity and creation counts? Women, for instance, have not always been included in this kind of creativity that leads to cultural production, nor minorities. not those without power or money. And I think that by revisiting these kinds of existing observations about who is not allowed to create, we can in fact expand the original question of creativity, which becomes who and what gets to create. The rise of computational automation developed out of an industrial and then post-industrial desire to eliminate the monotony of technological processes. Why would we have humans operating telephone switches? Why do we need a toll collector at the MTR station? Why do we need cashiers at grocery stores when we can have telephone transistors, octopus cards, and self-checkout machines? Why pay a human who can call in sick, request vacation, and demand raises when we can purchase and program a machine that never complains? What might sound economically pragmatic is in fact a deeply neoliberal and problematic in its social treatment of people, raising some ethical implications. And in this process of replacing this monotonous labor with AI in the question of disregarding humans, human well-being, human emotions, still it's creativity that I want to talk about. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into detail about some of the projects, but I'll refer to a few just so that you have an idea of what I mean. I think of electronic literature projects such as Brian Kin-Steffen's Semtexts, or Tristan Miller and Dave Morris's Shakespeare's Sonnet Generator, or Stephanie Strickland and Nick Montford's See and Spar Between, all of which automatically generate and regenerate different combinations of words that produce the context of, or the content of their creative texts. And I also think of this screenplay called Sunspring that was written entirely by AI and that a group of actors decided to perform. It's amazing if you want to look it up on YouTube. The video is called Sunspring, one word, a sci-fi short film starring Thomas Middleditch. It's awful. It's nonsensical. It's truly awful writing. It's good for a laugh. But on another level, I think, and forgive me for being informal, but I think its shittiness offers a sense of relief that this automated creativity cannot be taken seriously. Or so perhaps the failure of AI to write creativity in a convincing way is owing to the fact that creative writing is tricky. If any of you have ever tried to write creatively, or even if you've ever tried to write an essay the night before it was due, you know that writing is hard. And to write a poem, to write a story, I guess I think about F. Scott Fitzgerald's quote that one does not write to say something, but because one has something to say. So a classic understanding of creative writing might say that conditions of inspiration, motivation, maybe human angstiness may all contribute to being able to write creatively. Or so we have often idealized, but I think creative writing is also, if understood a different way, just words strung together on a page for aesthetic or stylistic narrative effect. And the fact that fields such as the digital humanities can perform computational text analysis of literature suggests that creative writing can actually be mapped or tracked, that its patterns can be predicted. My own opinion is that the richness of literary meaning and the depth of human emotion can't really be reduced to quantitative values, let alone machinically imitated. But that doesn't mean the text can't be written and at a faster pace than humans can get it done. So I think that to close, and also maybe to provoke, I would say that currently, and likely for a while, whether for our entertainment or our relief, we're not at a stage of creative automated writing that can be called comprehensible. Definitely not good, nowhere close to critical. And for me, good art must be critical. And maybe the critique comes from us, that we acknowledge a shift in the creative center, the human. So the takeaway I want to offer is that creativity as this human ability comes into question when it can be performed by something that is not human. That is, how we define creativity itself must change when another variable is introduced into its condition of becoming. So in this consideration, we're describing creation without motivation or desire, inspiration, drive, critique, creation without fear. And this may not be creative at all. in our terms. Machine vision's another matter of which we can speak. But if we decide that this is not creative as artists and makers and thinkers, then a new set of language must be devised that distinguishes between cognizing machinic work and conscious labors of love.
That was very interesting. I recently came across somebody who has created a computer program where they fed all the Harry Potter books into the program, and where they regenerate another story, Harry Potter story. It's really interesting. You can go onto YouTube and have a look at that. But it's just, but sometimes I wonder whether there's a point in having a computer generate an entire novel out of it, because it doesn't make any sense at all. So why spend the time doing it? But maybe, perhaps Maurice would have another point after, because he does a lot of interesting, he's in a support of AI, so we'll let him speak after. But maybe right now we'll have Paul first. Paul
Sorry
first.
about that. Talk about leading you on a bit and then
we'll
slapping
leave
you
Maurice
down.
at the end.
Never mind.
Paul
Apologies.
is a technology lawyer, and he's a DJ. He's a DJ on the weekends, and he also works on Clock and Flap, and he's a music and art lover. So we'll see what he says, whether he can be replaced.
I'm probably the most weird person who's going to sit on this stage this evening, in that lawyers you do not think are in any way creative. Good God, why is a lawyer anywhere near this? I should still be at work. But as discussed, I am a lawyer. I'm a technology lawyer. So my job, I was a technology lawyer from the year 2000, where I was the most uncool person in the world. Spent about 10 years of my career being the most uncool person in the world, which is why I took up DJing, trying to balance them out. But suddenly became cool. So now I work on things like cryptocurrency, whether someone can try and make a fortune by basically issuing their own currency. And the answer is yes, you probably can, by the way. There's some free legal advice, but it's not regulated. Don't sue me if it goes wrong. But all the way through to the application of AI. And AI is being used, and if you look around all the massive buildings of Hong Kong, all of the banks, all of the insurance companies, almost every industry is thinking we need to adapt AI, and that includes the lawyers. So have anyone heard of Ross, the first AI lawyer? I think it was IBM was behind this one. They obviously hate lawyers. This is a guy you can send all your work to. You don't have to pay him by the hour. You don't have to pay him at all, actually. Let's be honest, that's the perfect lawyer. And he'll spit out some legal research. Lots of solutions are being developed, including by my firm. So I work for a firm called Pinson Masons. And we have computer scientists developing AI solutions to look at loan agreements, to figure out which one is the one you want to invest in and make money with, to look at how we do research digitally to get the best outcome. And everyone thinks this is the coolest thing ever. This is the future. Aren't lawyers clever by having these digital solutions? And they also go, lawyers are going to be replaced. And actually, I think a lot of them are, because essentially you can have AI, in some sense, you can have robots doing the same thing. Now, what strikes me as shocking, there's a lawyer called, ex-lawyer, now author, called Richard Susskind, I don't know if any of you have heard of him, who talks about the death of the professions and the death of the lawyer. Now, he used to be a lawyer at our firm. We obviously treated him really badly, because now his career is entirely coming about the end of lawyers. And he talks about how automation and how AI will replace the profession, and as if it's this great, new, fantastic thing, as if it's something nobody would ever thought of. But what they haven't realized is that in the legal profession, what you do, and I've been part of this as much as anyone else, though I resisted it, and was probably why my early career involved me being fired a lot, was you get someone who's incredibly intelligent, has a university degree, normally a degree that's very hard to get, you bring them into a law firm, and you train them to eradicate all creative thought. You train them to be robots. You train them to be more shallow than an AI. You ask a lawyer who's just come through law school and done his first 2 years in a law firm to even try a page of a Harry Potter novel, it'll be even more gibberish. It'll have where, so forth, and with reference to the above named paragraph. It'll be awful. Terrible. Not a good ending. But AI is going to replace those people. So the junior lawyers, my advice to pretty much every Hong Kong parent now these days who seems to want their child to become a lawyer or a doctor, or it used to be banker, but after the financial crash, that, well, not banker, now it's cool again, now that we actually get stick with law, it's safe. Law is a disaster. What you're going to find is that lawyers at all levels up to about 10-year qualified lawyer, I'm a very old lawyer, will be no more. These people are not required because AI tools can already do most of the basic jobs, and they will be able to replace all of the jobs apart from the standing up in court, reading the jury, reading the judge, and using not your knowledge of the law, not your memorization of facts, to figure out how emotionally you get to someone and how you change the law and influence it. That's what's different. So yeah, that's the one part of my job. My other job is being a DJ. You won't believe the amount. So I got fired from my first 2 law jobs for being a DJ. One because I was a DJ with residencies on weeknights, which didn't do well with being in court at 9 a.m. The second one was because I thought the way to advance myself as a lawyer was to dye my hair bright red whilst working in a property department. Didn't go well. But DJing is a field which some people may think a DJ is just glorified Spotify, and if any people want to argue that, I will go and fight you outside. It is not. It's about reading a crowd. It's about understanding music and understanding creativity. So I'm a vinyl collector and DJ. So technology lawyer, really old technology for when I'm listening to music. But it's about having something that can't really be created with computers or with AI, at least not yet. So what you find, a lot of people saying, oh, we can replicate music, we can replicate DJing by using an algorithm, by using AI, by using machine learning, much as we can perhaps replicate writing a book. But this AI is still very primitive. It's still based on something that's gone before. It's just building on information that's available and creating something from that. So if you listen to the top 10 chart, you may as well have AI generating that. Something becomes popular, you get 4 different copies of the Chainsmokers. Anyone know who the Chainsmokers are? I'm not showing my age. I'm probably showing I'm down with the kids. Woohoo! Everything sounds the same. But think about what strikes you in creativity. Everyone in here must have a favorite piece of music and a favorite book. And someone just shook their heads. I don't like any music. Okay, fine. Most people in here will have a favorite piece of music, or you must be a lawyer, or a favorite book. And the reason that you like it is normally not necessarily because it's a good book. Look how many people find 50 Shades of Grey to be one of their favorite books. Some people like the films. Some people even like the music from the films. It's not well written or well acted, and the music's not particularly good either. But it hits something inside. It hits an emotion at a level that cannot really be easily defined, can't be defined by basic logic rule sets. So a computer program 5 years ago wouldn't be able to figure it out. But even AI, even machine learning, still doesn't have the unpredictability of what makes us really tick, of what makes us feel like we're human. Now, I know I've just edged into the Blade Runner sequel with all of this about how things are going to go forward. But my view is AI is a fantastic tool, and certainly for lawyers, particularly the senior ones who aren't going to lose their jobs, it is the way of the future, and it is a way that will change our entire world, particularly at the higher levels. For those who are in very monotonous, boring, data-driven jobs, there is a real problem, and that's something we're not going to talk about tonight. But in creativity, again, AI is a tool. You can use AI to analyze any piece of music and analyze any sequence of films, even a book, but it can't replace the thing that still makes us human. And maybe that will change. I mean, I'm a massive sci-fi fan, and I'm obviously a big fan of AI, unless it goes the way of the Terminator and we're all blown up. But I wouldn't mind looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Mind you, he was a robot, so that doesn't count. But we're not there yet, and I don't think we will get there in any of our lifetimes. And of course, I'm happy to be proved wrong. Anyway, over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. That's again very interesting, because my takeaway from that is that being a DJ makes a person cool. So anybody who finds themselves uncool should find a job at RTHK or any other, or any radio station for that matter. So last but not least, could we have Mr. Maurice Benayoun? He's an artist, theorist, and curator whose works have been exhibited and awarded in many major international museums. He's currently a professor at the School of Creative Media, City University, Hong Kong. I spoke to him on the phone recently, and I thought it was extremely interesting. He almost got me persuaded that AI is the way to go and it can replace human being. So let me pass the floor to you.
I'm not sure to have said exactly that.
No, he didn't say that, but he got me really persuaded.
Okay. So it's the situation is a bit embarrassing because I prepared slides. They were directly related to the work presented outside, which is the Brain Factory, which is a kind of complex thing if we don't give some keys to understand what is behind the scene. So I have to reorganize completely my talk, and of course I'm getting inspired by what you said, and I also attended the previous talk, the previous panel, and this word of creativity is coming very often, and of course one of the things is should we teach creativity to AI and so on. So for me there are different things. We have to be very clear about the terms. What AI is, what stands for. It's artificial intelligence. First, we have to understand what intelligence is. So we need a little bit of this. So it takes one to know one. We know that. And the other thing is artificial. Artificial is very simple. It's a word. It's a very simple word that means built by humans. Nothing more, nothing less. If it's artificial, it's not natural. That means it's not something that came before humans, but before we modified nature. So if we consider that an intelligence built by humans, we just start thinking about what is it supposed to be, or what is it supposed to be made for? What is the intention behind that? So I think, of course, the main weakness of artificial intelligence, or anything artificial, is the human side of it. Because human, we know them, we put some of them in jail, we kill some of them, we are not satisfied by the others, so that makes life a bit complicated. We are surrounded by humans, and it's already difficult to live with them. And so, of course, I understand that people are afraid by the idea to be surrounded by artificial intelligence that means more human than human. So that will be terrible. And of course that will be terrible because it's not so well done copy of the humankind. And that's a problem. At the same time, we know also that some extension of our human capacities can be interesting to solve very basic problem. Computation, very simple. How many calculation can we do with a machine that would be very boring if we do it by hand or by head, I don't know, depends on us. And so there are many things like that we have to consider. So for me, interesting application of artificial intelligence are well-conceived application of extension of the human brain. That's it. It doesn't mean that it's good. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It means just that it depends. It depends on us. It's about us. It's all about us. What do we do with that? For example, if we create something very smart that understands everybody, everything about what we do, and that will decide what we can do, and we call it a social credit system, for example, that could be very smart, very clever, and will change the society forever. This is coming. So this is artificial intelligence. So I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it depends on us. What do we do with that? So what do the artists do with that? That's an interesting question because I thought it was the nature of the debate we have now. The question is what the artists do with that. So there is a word I hear very often, which is creativity. But, you know, I'm not so young. So when I went to school, to university, we used to have creativity classes because it was very trendy. What was creativity classes? What did we learn at this time? That's interesting to know because the word was quite invented in the 60s. It was a word to help in communication and marketing. It was not about art. Creativity had nothing to do with about art. It's about how to create diversity, how to surprise, how to create excitement, how to find things that people don't already know, and so we can get the best of it in terms of impact. And so the keys of creativity were very clear. First, you have to cultivate, you have to help people to be more divergent. Divergence is the first stage, because everybody is convergent. I tell you how to pour water in the bottle. You think, okay, I take the tap, I put water in the bottle, and then that's convergent. But then there are people starting thinking, okay, let's think, if it's raining tomorrow, maybe I should put enough bottle. How can I get enough water to have in the bottle? Enough. So maybe I can modify the climate or move the bottle to the other side of the planet where it's raining now. So we could have a bottle on an airplane that will be moving all the time, following the clouds. That's the difference between convergence and divergence. And this was not in my slides. So I'm just trying to improvise some things that explain what divergence can be and what convergence is. Of course, the second stage of creativity is convergence. Because suddenly you find this great idea having bottles moving with planes trying to follow the clouds. And then you still have to fill the bottle. And maybe innovation can come out of that. We can probably find new solutions. And I really like what DK said before, saying that the first thing to teach probably is creativity, in the sense of we have to teach how to find solutions that are not already on the shelves. We can build something not by putting together things that already exist. How can we have a total different vision of things? How can we find solution to a world that already is a huge amount of questions? So we have the questions. First, we have to identify them. Second, we have to find solution. So the artist out of that, what the artist is doing, is the artist the most creative person? Not sure. You know, there are people singing fast, and there are people singing far. I guess the artist is supposed to be the one asking the real questions, wondering, where is the problem? Is there any problem? And out of that, the artist, identifying the question, try to give a shape to the question. Shaping the question is probably the main problem of the artist. It's not creativity, it's not gesticulation, it's not putting colors and trying to make noise. You know, it's something else. And so, when the artist consider using computers to produce a certain meaning, maybe to generate questions, he's not trying just to imitate what has been done in literature, cinema, or painting, because, of course, we can imitate, but the real artists were not doing that. They never started. They started maybe imitating as a training part of their education, but then they became really artists when they started to stop thinking of reproducing what has been done before. Otherwise, they just come in the list and we forget them. The one we remember are the one that created a real shift in the mindset of people. And this shift, for me, is the main thing we have to do. So if we use what we call artificial intelligence as an extension or a way to represent that, or to interfere, or to modify the question, or to make questions that are different for each of us, then the quality of the dialogue we get, for example, on an interactive artwork, becomes as complex, maybe more, than the dialogue we have with other people. I don't say better, I just say different. And this dialogue is supposed to ask the real questions, or maybe differently the same questions. And the fact to ask the same question differently suddenly bring another vision, another kind of sparkle in the brain that make us think differently afterwards. So for me, the mission of the artist is this one.
So I think it's particularly interesting when you said that art, when an artist create a new movement, it creates a rupture from the past, and that's when new art, a new period is created. Do you think could we create a new form of art, a new form of art movement purely out of computers?
I think it's already the case. You know, it has been the last 20, 30 years. There are people that have been working with algorithm, working with technologies in general, but some of them more or less complex that make us think that it may have something to do with what we call artificial intelligence, just to come back to the original topic. This is my convergent side. And of course it exists. I mean, you're not creating something which is a final result. We're creating the condition of apparition of the result. That becomes different for each of us.
But there's still a person behind it, though. So we would definitely need a person behind it. We couldn't just let the... so we still need an artist behind it. We cannot just leave.
Yeah, for me, yes.
So we're still suggesting that it's a tool, essentially. So that AI is essentially no different than an advanced paintbrush. But what is fearful for people like lawyers who think all of our jobs are going to go, and accountants and whoever else, is where AI becomes the artist itself. I mean, is that possible? And actually, there's a thing going on at the moment in society across the world in general, which is very much a move towards a singularity of thought, which I don't think is very attractive. I've gone off Facebook. My New Year's resolution was not to look at Facebook because it's the biggest echo chamber for me, and everyone has the same view as me, and you're like, God, these guys are really boring. Obviously, no one's Facebook friends to me. Apologies. I don't mean you. But there is a move towards a singularity in what people see as valuable in terms of art, in what people see as valuable in terms of creativity. And you see the mainstream becoming more mainstream. A good example, we were talking earlier about I interview students for law jobs, and I get very depressed because they, not just because they want to be lawyers, because they've been educated to be boring, because they think lawyers are boring, therefore they must be as boring as possible. And you ask them what they're interested in, and we were making jokes before we came in. So I've had superhero movies as their interest. I mean, that's fine, but why are you into it? And they can't explain. I was like, that's a great answer, because I'm interested in justice and I want to do what's right. No, everyone likes superhero movies. You're like, oh, okay. And that uniformity makes me think that perhaps AI could then become the creator, because you put together a decent algorithm, a bit of machine learning, and it just churns out lots of terrible movies, lots of terrible pictures, and you end up with just the fringes of anything with any creativity.
In contrast to that kind of singularity, I'm seeing quite a different movement from a lot of artists that are witnessing this sort of rise of AI in a sort of cultural industry and seeing it as being a part of their everyday lives, and knowing that, as I mentioned, like critique being one of their prime objectives, almost as in a reaction. If AI starts to create creatively, even in using it, that there can be a position from which to view that in a way that doesn't have to sort of lay down and die or accept a singularity, in which case it sort of becomes a response that becomes a new kind of creativity. I don't know if we would exactly use those terms. I'm not sure that the terms even exist. And as I was discussing this panel with somebody, they asked me, well, what about machine vision? When we're not talking about AI for us, but the AI for, like, in the way that it's been programmed, it doesn't care about us. Like, it's been programmed not to care about us. So, sort of what I'll return to that in a second. But I'm thinking about specifically the post-digital artistic movement, which is not digital. It is a response to the digital. It is a question of what happens after the digital has become ingrained and established. But something that kind of comes up in an ethical level, you asked earlier about ethical implications, is this sort of the understanding of the machinic vision, which I sort of alluded to at the end of my talk, which is that when we're talking about automation, let's talk about AI in the stock market, or AI in finance and economics. That kind of AI, and I'm thinking about a video that I watched recently, does not actually care. It was worded really interesting. It cares about profit. It cares about function. It doesn't even care about wealth, which is a different category. It just is doing its job in a way that it has this sort of like, it is automated. It is taught to do something that is not for our benefit, doesn't care if it crashes, does often have these mini crashes. I know a professor who lost tens of thousands of dollars because of a mini crash of an algorithm in the stock market. And I think it's important to acknowledge that this is not even the same kind of intention. What do we mean by when we talk about what we want of creativity, what we want, like what we imagine creativity to be? That's not, if it's not being taught to the machines are just, they're kind of like going off on their own to operate, and that's not the same at all.
You just mentioned that AI is made not to care about us. That really got me thinking, because is it really made not to care about us? Because if you look at Facebook, which we all look at all the time, it actually knows you better than you yourself, because it reminds you of what happened last year on this particular day, and it records all your comments, how many comments you've made on a particular person, how many likes you've given to a particular person. So in fact, the computer actually knows you better than yourself, because it remembers all your comments. And so I wonder whether if it is made not to care about us.
If I can just quickly respond to that, I don't think that I still don't think it cares about us. It's just doing its job, which is to make us feel like we're kind of. I remember hearing a talk in which someone was describing our relationship with with Instagram and Facebook. It knows you better than most of your friends. It cares more. It reminds you, it's like, this is your anniversary of blah, or like, I remember. But it doesn't care. It's just, that's the way that it's, because it wants you to feed back in that information. It's like a feedback loop that it is better for the AI, for machine learning, but that's not for us. That's just what it's programmed to do. And I'm actually, maybe a major distinction here is, I remember Kate Hales talking. She has a book that came out this year called Unthought, or rather last year, and she distinguished between consciousness for machines, asking the question if machines are conscious. She said, well, that's that question, we're past that question. It's whether or not machines can cognize, and the answer is yes. But what does that mean? That means it's a different set of criteria in general that don't even, that doesn't even apply to the way that we talk about emotion or care or relationships. It's data, which is a completely different way of interacting or even seeing information or the world.
I would say at the moment, AI, certainly the AI that people talk about in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, is created to make profit, as you say. And there's all this, I get really annoyed about this, not just because I'm one of the professions who are in the firing line. That's the lawyer one, not the DJ one. Though the DJ one, like I say, Spotify, people say, oh, AI is going to change everyone's lives because all of the menial jobs will be replaced and we will all leave a life of productive leisure. And that phrase, productive leisure, just makes me want to punch the person in the face when they say that, because most people who are living on minimum wage, when their job is replaced by AI, they won't be living in productive leisure. There'll be robots pushing trolleys full of cardboard around Hong Kong, so you won't even be able to do that anymore. And that's how people don't really understand the nature of AI. It's still the people creating it are creating it for a purpose. And so far, no one has seriously, with a view to making profit, I suppose, created an AI that would come across as truly creative. At the moment, they're lab experiments. They're something that's being done because it's cool. But can you imagine if Disney thought they could design and build a machine learning AI to write the next 74 Star Wars films, and that people would swallow them up? Then, of course, they'd go for it. So I I worry, and I like what you said about AI, people responding to AI, because I think we do. I think we realize that perhaps our innate human creativity, our emotion, or sort of our EQ, our emotional intelligence, that's the phrase I'm looking for. We realize that that's one of the few things that will still make us unique, but that can be programmed. You could develop an AI, and you'd probably do it now, I'm not talking 5 years in the future, that could probably look at someone, decide how they're feeling, and deal with them. And that's when it gets a bit scary. I've kind of talked myself into a corner where I'm now thinking, oh God, the world's going to end. But how do we react to that? Then does creativity start to die off? Does it become a sort of niche underground?
I would like to react to different things. First, the idea that AI have been created for optimization, business, or I don't know what. You know, it's like internet has been created for military purpose. It's true. It's true. But at the same time, the first use during 20 years was only for science, was only for research, was only for sharing information, was very positive purpose. So we cannot say that a technology at the beginning is created like that. And many of the technologies have been created by artists. We forget that. For example, Jérôme Lanier with VPL Research doing the first headset to CVR in the 80s did that for NASA. He's a composer. He's a musician. And he created a company to make that. He created a bodysuit. He created a data gloves. He created all the tools that have been used by technology, and that seems to become, for some people, one of the top of the new things nerds should have to be happy. Actually, it's not new. It's just 30 years ago. So it's not really the first time I use a neural network, what we consider as a kind of core of some AI application, in an artwork was in '94. The work was called Is a Devil Curved? It was displayed in television channel booth in Imagina, which was a festival for about new media in the 90s. And it was an interactive work based on VR using neural network, showing how to create automatically a mode of seduction with pleasure, satisfaction, rewards, destroy the diversity of the content and destroy the potential of attraction of mass media. This thing was a critical thing that was even accepted on the booth of the TV channel, because at this time this TV channel was kind of open-minded. I think it would be the same one would be totally opposite to something like that. Just to explain that the technology in itself doesn't mean that we are playing with the devil. When I'm talking about the devil, I'm talking about the mass media using very basic seduction things to keep. It's very sexy, very erotic, and the soundtrack is made out of porn movie. So I'm not kidding with that, you know. It's very serious. But I would like to say a few words about what I was supposed to show on my slides, because it's a totally different understanding of what we are talking about. For me, there is a very important thing to understand. Why do we develop technologies, and extreme technologies? Of course, McLuhan says there are extensions of the body, and we can think about the sense and the physical body and so on, and we can make robots, and we can feel better, we can have a lot of sensations that are much better than the previous one. And what I try to demonstrate, and what I couldn't show you, so you just can imagine now, is the idea that we design few thousands of years ago, we designed God. And we designed God as a collection of features. And we are just trying now to do all of them. For example, create light. Okay, we know how to do it. Create life. We quite know how to do it now. Change life. We know how to do it. judge, punish. We know how to do it. And we use more and more technologies to change the weather, change the world, modify the environment. We are thinking about putting life on Mars, sorry. That's my French side. And we can. And we can more and more thanks to all these technologies. So the interesting thing is how AI is adding to our capacity to extend our power in order to become close to God. The problem is not God the problem, because he will never complain. The problem is us, because at the same time, we are still human. And everything good we can do, we can probably do it very badly. And the people in charge, the people with power now, accessing all these technologies, they can decide everything around us, either in United States, in China, in North Korea, and so on. These people can use this potential of modifying matter, making it change the world. Some other, more discreetly, like Google, know everything about us, everything. How many times you make love, who you talk to, what you say, what are your political opinions, where you are, where you will be, where you're going, and so on, everything. So the fact they remind you about your birthday, it's probably the worst thing for creativity, as if it's the objective. Because we know that creativity is coming from the fact that we forget. And if we are able to forget, of course, if we remember everything, what would we create anything, you know? Everything is here in my mind. I don't need it. I don't need to do something different. The difference is supposed to make the world better or maybe more understandable. And for me, this global objective of the humankind using technologies to create some things that we have been designing before, we have a manual for that. This is called the Genesis. You take the Genesis step by step, and you see the evolution of technologies the last 20 years. This is exactly what we are doing. You just reverse engineering. You do reverse engineering, and you go backward, and you come back to separating water and air. And this is what we know how to do. And then turning off the light. This is what we should do.
You were talking earlier. I mean, you say about we can do everything that God can do. Are we not essentially now creating, with the prevalence of AI and the development of how it becomes a part of our lives, are we not creating our own God, whether we like it or not? Because you mentioned at the very beginning the social credit system. Are you all familiar with this? Being slowly on the way to being rolled out in China. And whatever your political persuasions, it doesn't really matter. But this is a system which uses, again, very weak AI, to be honest, to judge you, decide whether you are doing things that the people in power want you to do. And if you don't, you are penalized. That, as a lawyer, let alone the DJ bit, terrifies me. But how do we stop something like? Is it now out of control? Is it the fact that, I mean, going back to creativity, this very system stifles creativity because I'm going to an art gallery relating to political prisoners. Boom, your social credit goes down and you can't leave your house. I mean, I haven't got any answers to this.
And
what do we do?
If you're an artist and you're doing that, your social credit is going down as well. So this is why I consider that the role of the artist is to take care of these questions and to try to figure out and to represent and to make visible what are the real stakes now, what are the real issues. And this is, of course, this is a huge one, which is very interesting in terms of political strategy, in terms of control, is the fact that what we call gamification, you know, you convert everything into a game. Now it's a game that everybody wants to play. You want to play to win. You want a better ranking than your neighbor. and you're very happy to playing the game. Because maybe you're just a bit lower, but you have the hope to be over the other one. Until you understand that you cannot anymore take a plane, you cannot take a train, you cannot buy a car, you cannot, and then everything is modified in your daily life. But the thing is that people will enjoy hating the system. And of course, you need a kind of cultural background to accept that. That's the thing. That's the thing. I think it's difficult to start this in some countries, and it's quite easy to start it in some other. But we are talking about 2020. It's not Big Brother. It's far beyond. So there are artists making things about this topic. For example, Jubing made a video called Dragonfly Eyes, and this movie is forbidden in China. One is one of the top artists in China. So that's interesting. You cannot talk about that. You can just say, oh, that's really great. Look at my ranking.
I think the consequences of this on an I'm thinking about the longer term implications of a system like this. AI, regardless, is that it actually encourages a lot of people sort of to become these job candidates that you're encountering. These sort of somewhat robotic. Oh, how do I follow the formula? How do I get the best score? But on some level, I mean, unless someone can coerce their way into a higher score, it sounds like if everybody plays by the rules, they kind of get the same sort of score, as in everybody's just trying to follow a formula as well, and that to me is the kind of the end of creativity entirely. There's no stepping outside the box. It's like, well, how much of this is being monitored? Especially, and I'm not sure if people are aware, but legally, I think actually, I can't believe I have this knowledge, that for you to do something, like to write something illegal or to do, if you wrote libel on your phone, even if you didn't publish it, if you didn't do anything, the fact that you've written it on your phone actually counts still as libel, because that information does not belong to you. It's on your phone. You don't have to do anything with it.
Not till if you post it on Facebook, boom, libel.
Yeah, sure, but the fact
But
that
just
like
writing
a lot
it,
of machines.
Somebody has libel. Brief law lecture. Sorry, for libel, you have to publish it.
Okay.
So post it, and it has to have it has to be untrue, which is normally the ultimate defense. And it also has to have the effect of damaging someone's reputation.
Isn't there some sort of software where also if you write it, even if I mean, this is just an example, that if I wrote something in my Facebook post, even if I didn't post it, that's still being,
it's still being monitored.
It's still being monitored.
But it's not being published.
No, it's not being published, but it's no longer actually technically mine either.
That's true.
Which is, I think, also starts to. It's not a question of authorship; it's a question of ownership. Where like the ownership of my creativity also. If I use these tools, it doesn't belong to me anymore, and that I think is also a major consequence.
Yeah, I think this has gone very heavy for a Thursday evening, so I hope you're all going to hit the bar later after this, because it's become incredibly depressing. But we've it's like the death of creativity live on stage. What has happened is we've created tools, and we continue to create tools, and they're fantastic tools. That I mean. I'm very pro AI. I think the advancements it makes in our ability to process data, to develop solutions in terms of helping people is phenomenal. But at the same time, you wouldn't expect this from a lawyer, the way that these solutions are being tailored and marketed to us and sold to us and engineered means that essentially then we become the people who are being programmed. So everyone, we talk about the China credit system that they're bringing in, but we're all part of something. Everyone here must be on a social media platform. I bet everyone is. Anyone not on any social media platforms? There we go. Nobody. Amazing. It's terrifying. But it programs you. It influences the way that you think. Everything that you post, in fact, everything that you may type in and not post on some programs, on some profiles, you're correct, is monitored. and then they think, well, then we'll send you more things that go along with this. And it becomes that echo chamber. It becomes this system where suddenly you are being manipulated. God, I sound like a real conspiracy theorist. You are being manipulated into the way that you think. And this goes back to what I was saying about putting everyone into one singularity. And that scares me. And I don't think it's the end of creativity, because people know that, and already people are rebelling against it. People are already looking at ways around it. But it's when it becomes so powerful that rebelling against it becomes, I suppose, a crime, then we have an issue.
Should we now open the floor for Q&A? Any or
we'll
comments?
blind you first.
Jean-Michel?
I wanted to ask you, what do you think about this kind of assistance on writing? Like when you write a note on an iPhone, for example, you have words will come up. And did you notice after using about 6 months your phone that the words were coming up are the one you have think about a few weeks or 5 months ago were accumulated because the AI knows what you want to write or suggests you what to write. So do you think this kind of thing is also destroying the creativity, in fact, instead of growing the creativity? I mean, for writing, for example. So I think the best is to write on just a paper notebook. That's my opinion.
It's funny, I wrote my dissertation on digital media, and I wrote the whole thing on paper. But I felt like I was necessary because it allowed me some critical distance. But partially, I find that I think differently on a computer, and especially like typing on my phone. I hate having conversations on my phone. And I don't have an automated text predictor. But I think that I'm not going to offer too many ideas about whether or not that's good or bad, except to say that sometimes people's grammar benefits from it. If they're too lazy to use apostrophes, sometimes I appreciate that. It's like it'll auto capitalize and offer periods. I appreciate that as a reader. But at the same time, the kind of pushing specific words at you can be part of that illusion that this technology knows you so well. My phone seems to know that, for example, don't mean that I'm not always talking about ducks, for example. And I think some of you might know what I mean by that. It's a crass joke, and but that. I've also seen a lot of people take this into in another way and start to make little jokes with or little experiments, writing experiments by allowing just like clicking the first word over and over, and turning it into a sort of algorithmic game through which they can feel not a sense of authorship, but a sense of power over the machine. Like, I know what you're doing, and I'm gonna take back and create something of my own, which is sometimes nonsensical as well. As for writing, it's a little bit limiting, isn't it? Especially in terms of vocabulary. But other than that, I've mostly been enthused by and encouraged by the kinds of responses I've seen from critics and other academics who try to have fun with it and say, isn't this ridiculous? But then also, what kind of fun can we have with it? If we have algorithms that can predict text, and how can I turn that into a poem? It reminds me of when Twitter still had the 120 characters limitation. People were saying, how can I write a novel in 120 characters? How can I write a recipe in 120 characters? Finding limits or using limits is actually sometimes a good way to create new things, especially in writing.
Yeah, I would would like to add something to that. First, I don't use that. I don't know exactly what would be a predictive a tool, but I can imagine. I mean, a predictive tool for writing. Really, I'm not talking about phones, texting or something like that. The thing is, of course, you can have the program analyzing what are your habits, your rituals, your writing style, and things like that. And some people are seriously considering using that to help you to survive. I mean, if you're writing every day on a social network, you can imagine one day you don't exist anymore. I'm sorry, I guess it's not a revelation, but this will happen to us. And so there are people working on the fact to know pretty well how you write, the words you use, the frequency, the people you talk to, how you reply to them, what is the tone or the emotional intention you can hide behind it, to create a substitute that will keep on dialoguing with people when you will die. So, is it creativity? Is it transhumanism? It's happening. It's now. It's not. We are not talking about the future. So the complexity of the engagement of the AI or not AI, we don't care. But let's say the algorithms in the process of creating content, which certainly would become your content without you intent, without you intention. It's interesting, but I'm not sure how many people here would say no. Not sure.
Well, thank you so much. The time is up.
Well, can I say one last bit?
Yes.
And we can all talk later on. I'm going to lower the tone a second. First off, to answer your question, I think the predictive stuff, the tools I think are useful, and I think they don't necessarily change what you're creating. That whatever you're hoping to create is still there. We may come to a point where actually it says, oh, I see you're writing a novel about how you grew up hating your mother. How about a novel about flowers? That's when we know we have a problem. But the predictive text thing, you can see it happening. But the predictive text thing, if we're going to close, I'm going to close on a real gutter humor. I had a disastrous dating experience with predictive text. So meeting my date for Mexican food. I'm late because I'm a lawyer, so I'm working late. I'm already at the restaurant. No worries, blah, blah, blah.
That's not an excuse.
Yeah, no, it's not. I'm already at the restaurant. Shall I order for you? Yes, please. What would you like? And of course, predictive text. I'd like vaginas. Fajitas. Yeah, fajitas. So yeah, predictive text can go do one, frankly.
Okay, thank you so much. We can bring the conversation out after.
Well, thank you, Ms. Joanne Chan, and okay, many thanks to all our distinguished speakers for offering us some very up-to-date views on this topic. Well, we could keep discussing for hours, but unfortunately, we're way out of time. So, on behalf of the Conseil General of France, I would like to thank you all again, to thank you, our distinguished speakers, moderators, and our partners, and also thank you to you, the audience, for making this first Hong Kong Night of Idea a real success. To close the evening, you are all invited either to proceed to on stage, to test the AIR performance you saw earlier, or proceed to the courtyard to immerse yourself in our VR corner. So again, thank you very much for attending the first edition of the Night of Ideas in Hong Kong. We look forward to see you again next year. Thank you and good night.
I just would like to add something about the Brain Factory, if it's still installed and if we can interact with it. Just saying it's a tool that is supposed to help you to give a shape to human abstractions. So you take something from the brain, you give it a shape, and then it becomes an object, a commodity. And then we can start a business.
Thank you.